Khuddhaka Nikàya. Parayanavagga, the chapter on the way to the far shore. Ajita Manavapaka. Ajita's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Ajita. With what is the world shrouded? Because of what doesn't it shine? With what is it smeared? Tell me. What is its great danger and fear? The Buddha. With ignorance. The world is shrouded. Because of stinginess. Heedlessness. It doesn't shine. With longing. It's smeared, I tell you. Suffering, stress. Its great danger and fear. Ajita. They flow every which way. The streams. What is their blocking? What their restraint, tell me. With what are they finally stopped? The Buddha. Whatever streams there are in the world, their blocking is mindfulness. Mindfulness is their restraint, I tell you. With discernment, they're finally stopped. Ajita. Discernment and mindfulness. Name and form, dear sir. Tell me, when asked this, where are they brought to a halt? The Buddha. This question you've asked, Ajita. I'll answer it for you. Where name and form are brought to a halt, without trace, with the cessation of consciousness, they're brought to a halt. Ajita. Those here who have fathomed the Dhamma. Those who are learners. Those who are run-of-the-mill. When you, dear sir, astute, are asked this, tell me their manner of life. The Buddha. He should not hanker for sensual pleasures. Should be limpid in mind. Skilled in all mental qualities. He, the monk, should live his life mindfully. Tisametya Manavapaka. Tisametya's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Tisametya. Who here in the world is contented? Who has no agitations? What thinker, knowing both sides, doesn't adhere in between? Whom do you call a great person? Who here has gone past the seamstress craving? The Buddha. He who, in the midst of sensualities, follows the holy life, always mindful, craving free. The monk who is, through fathoming things, unbound. He has no agitations. He, the thinker, knowing both sides, doesn't adhere in between. He, I call a great person. He here has gone past the seamstress craving. Khuddhaka Manavapaka. Khuddhaka's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Khuddhaka. To the one unperturbed, who has seen the root of all things, I have come with a question. Because of what have many human seers, noble warriors, Brahmans, offered sacrifices to devas here in the world? I ask you, O blessed one. Please tell me. The Buddha. Those many human seers, noble warriors, Brahmans, who have offered sacrifices to devas here in the world, Khuddhaka, hoping for more of the state of being, offered their sacrifices because of aging. Khuddhaka. Those many human seers, noble warriors, Brahmans, who have offered sacrifices to devas here in the world, have they, O blessed one, heeding the path of sacrifice, crossed over birth and aging? I ask you, O blessed one. Please tell me. The Buddha. They hoped for, liked, longed for, so sacrificed. They longed for sensuality. dependent on gain. I tell you, those who take on the yoke of sacrifice, impassioned with the passion for becoming, have not crossed over birth and aging. Khuddhaka. If those who take on the yoke of sacrifice haven't crossed over the flood, dear sir, then who in the world of beings divine and human has crossed over birth and aging? I ask you, O blessed one, please tell me. The Buddha, he who has fathomed the far and near in the world, for whom there is nothing perturbing in the world, his vices evaporated, undesiring, untroubled, at peace. He, I tell you, has crossed over birth and aging. Metago Manavapaka. Metago's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Metago. I ask you, O blessed one, please tell me. I regard you as knowledgeable, with yourself developed. From what have the many forms of stress and suffering arisen in the world? The Buddha. If you ask me, the coming into being of stress and suffering, I will tell it to you, as one who discerns from acquisition as cause. The many forms of stress and suffering come into being in the world. Whoever, unknowing, makes acquisitions, the fool, comes to stress and suffering again and again. So one who's discerning, focused on the birth of stress and suffering, their coming into being, should make no acquisitions. Metago. What we asked, you've expounded. Now we ask something else. Please tell us, how do the prudent cross over the flood of birth and aging, lamentation and sorrow? Please, sage, declare this to me, as this Dhamma has been known by you. The Buddha. I will teach you the Dhamma in the here and now, not quoted words, knowing which, living mindfully, you'll cross over beyond entanglement in the world. Metago. And I relish, great seer, that Dhamma supreme, knowing which, living mindfully, I'll cross over beyond entanglement in the world. The Buddha. Whatever you're alert to, above, below, across, in between, dispelling any delight, any laying claim to those things, consciousness should not take a stance in becoming. The monk who dwells thus, mindful, heedful, letting go of his sense of mine, knowing right here, would abandon birth and aging, lamentation and sorrow, stress and suffering. Metago. I relish, Gautama, the great seer's words, well expounded, without acquisition. For yes, O blessed one, you've abandoned stress and suffering, as this Dhamma has been known by you. And they, too, would abandon stress and suffering, those whom you, sage, would admonish unceasingly. Having met you, I bow down to you. Great one. Perhaps you will admonish me unceasingly. The Buddha. Whoever you recognize as a knowledgeable Brahman, possessing nothing, unentangled in sensuality and becoming, yes, he has crossed over the flood. Having crossed to the far shore, he is without harshness or doubt. And anyone who has realized, who is knowledgeable here, having unentangled the bond to becoming and free of craving, untroubled, undesiring, he, I tell you, has crossed over birth and aging. Dotaka Manavapaka. Dotaka's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Dotaka. I ask you, O Blessed One. Please tell me. I hope for your words, great seer. Having heard your pronouncement, I'll train for my own unbinding. The Buddha. In that case, be ardent, astute and mindful right here. Then, having heard my pronouncement, train for your own unbinding. Dotaka. I see in the world of beings, divine and human, a Brahman who lives, possessing nothing. I pay homage to him, the all-around I. From my doubts, O Sakyan, release me. The Buddha. No one in the world, Dotaka, can I release from doubting. But knowing the most excellent Dhamma, you will cross over the flood. Dotaka. Teach with compassion, O Brahman, the Dhamma of seclusion, so that I may know, so that I, unafflicted as space, may live right here, independent, at peace. The Buddha. I will teach you peace, in the here and now, not quoted words, knowing which, living mindfully, you'll go beyond entanglement in the world. Dotaka. And I relish, great seer, that peace supreme, knowing which, living mindfully, I'll go beyond entanglement in the world. The Buddha. Whatever you're alert to, above, below, across, in between, knowing it as a bond in the world. Don't create craving for becoming or non-dash. Upasiva Manavapaka. Upasiva's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Upasiva. Alone, Sakyan, and with nothing to rely on. I can't venture across the great flood. Tell me, all around I, the support to rely on for crossing over this flood. The Buddha. Mindfully focused on nothingness. Relying on there isn't. You should cross over the flood. Abandoning sensual pleasures. Abstaining from conversations. Keep watch for the ending of craving, night and day. Upasiva. One free from passion for all sensual pleasures. Relying on nothingness, letting go of all else. Released in the highest emancipation of perception. Does he stay there unaffected? The Buddha. One free from passion for all sensual pleasures. Relying on nothingness, letting go of all else. Released in the highest emancipation of perception. He stays there unaffected. Upasiva. If he stays there, O all around I, unaffected for many years, right there, would he be cooled and released? Would his consciousness be like that? The Buddha. As a flame overthrown by the force of the wind, goes to an end that cannot be classified. So the sage free from naming activity goes to an end that cannot be classified. Upasiva. He who has reached the end, does he not exist? Or is he for eternity free from disease? Please, sage, declare this to me, as this phenomenon has been known by you. The Buddha. One who has reached the end has no criterion by which anyone would say that for him it doesn't exist. When all phenomena are done away with, all means of speaking are done away with as well. Nanda Manavapaka. Nanda's questions. Translated from the Pali by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. Nanda. There are in the world sages, they say. In what way do they call one a sage? For possessing knowledge.